Hi guys, James at RampantLionReviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one, we are going to cross the Øresund once again, and we're going to go back to Copenhagen in Denmark and return to a brewery that has featured on the channel many times before. I've had some really nice beers from these guys over the years, and I would say that this brewery are best known for their kind of hazy New England style IPAs, and it's another one of those that we're going to have a look at today. As you'll know if you've watched the channel for any length of time, I really enjoy my Danish beer, and I would say that the quality of Danish beers is very, very high these days, and in recent years this is one of the breweries who have really been at the forefront of things. So always nice to review the new stuff from them. I'm curious to see how this one turns out, and I hope that you guys enjoy my take on this beer as well. So for this review then, we are going to go to Herlev, which is in the northwestern part of Copenhagen, and we're going to return to Gamma Brewing Company. So the beer we have today is called Go Off. It comes in at 8% ABV, and this one is a New England hazy, whatever you want to call it, double IPA. And this beer was released as part of the Tillfälliga temporary assortment through Systembolaget here in Sweden on the 16th of March 2021. So it's been a little while since my last Gamma Brewing review. I think that came back in October or November of 2020 if I remember correctly, but I actually have two beers to review from Gamma this month. I also got the Zigzag Session IPA as part of the Lokal och Småskaligt assortment in Systembolaget, which came out on the 1st of March 2021. So you'll see that reviewed in a couple of videos time. Maybe that video will appear in a week or two. You'll just need to wait and see. But yeah, in the meantime, really looking forward to this one. I've heard that this is a very, very nice beer, and it's definitely nice to return to Gamma after about 5 months or so. I can't believe it's been that long since I reviewed a beer from these guys, because I always kept an eye out for them. So yeah, very much looking forward to this one. Always nice to review some Danish beers for you here on the channel, and I hope that you guys enjoy my take on this one as well. So let's go for it then. As always with my reviews, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done from Gamma Brewing Company before, and you will no doubt see more added to that list in the near future. But there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The whole channel, of course, has a geography-based tagging system, so you can go into the homepage and search for beer based on country, city, state, county, province, prefecture, whatever it is you happen to be interested in. Do check out the playlists of beers from different countries. There is one there for all the Danish beers that I've reviewed for you. That's being added to very regularly because I live so close to Denmark and I love my Danish beers, as I've repeated numerous times on the channel before. And as always, please do get in touch and let me know some of the other beers and breweries that you guys would like to see me review. It's always great to hear from you guys that are watching the videos, and the support that you show the channel is hugely appreciated. So anyway, to tell you a little bit about Gamma Brewing Company then, on to my brewery notes. So Gamma Brewing Company are now based in Herlev in the northwest of Copenhagen, as I mentioned earlier. And the company was founded back in 2015 by 4 friends who were bartenders in the various beer bars around the city. And they often used to just talk about how it would be cool to have their own brewery, and at that point they didn't know that it was going to become a reality quite soon. But in the early days they took in another co-owner, so the team at the brewery is currently Jakob, Anders, Jesper, Koi and Nick, and they all had a little bit of homebrewing experience between them when they started, but 2 of them worked in Ulsnegern in Copenhagen, which had purchased the former Stronzo brewery in Görløse, and it was this that would go on to become Ölkollektivet. So apparently they were invited to join Ölkollektivet, and they got a really good deal on a 20 hectolitre fermentation tank, and so they started the brewery without any experience of having run a business between them, which is pretty impressive when you look at where they are today. But obviously it went very well for them, and they've expanded a lot, and they were producing around 500 hectolitres at maximum capacity during their time in Ölkollektivet. And one of the owners in the brewery is also a co-owner of the Mig in Ulsnegern bar up in Aarhus, which is on Öland, the Danish mainland as well. I apologise if any of these Danish pronunciations are off. I'm not quite used to the Danish side of things yet. My Swedish is getting better, but my Danish pronunciations aren't quite there yet. But Ölkollektivet has been home to Ulsnegern, Gamma Brewing and Dry and Bitter, and Ulsnegern were also brewing the Bad Seed beers under contract for a period of time before they got their own brewery. I believe Bad Seed Brewing are now based up near Aalborg, which is where Peter the Master of Hoppets lives, if I'm not mistaken. But Ghost Brewing and Rooster also used to brew at this facility, but they've since moved on, and I believe that Ull Collectiva is now only home to Ulsnagern and Dry and Bitter Brewing Company at the moment, but maybe they're going to get their own breweries. But in July of 2020, Gamma Brewing Company announced that they were going to move to a new brewery in Herlev, and so they started working on this building and built it up over the next few months, and then in February of 2021 they produced their last beers in Görlöse before they moved into this new site in Herlev, and the first beers were released the following month in March. I think this one probably was brewed in Görlöse, but maybe the next review after the Zigzag that you see me do from Gamma will be from the new brewery in Herlev. But that's exciting times for them. It increases their capacity quite dramatically from what I understand. I wasn't able to find an exact figure, but their capacity will be greatly expanded now. And yeah, as of March 2021, when I'm filming this review for you, Gamma Brewing Company have produced around 120 different beers, and that number will no doubt increase over the coming months. They tend to release 2 or 3 new beers every month actually. They're quite a prolific brewery, these guys, so 120 beers in the space of about 5-6 years is pretty impressive. You know, that's about 20 beers a year, so roughly a beer every 2.5-3 weeks, something like that, if you want to break it down in that way. But pardon me, yeah, that's all I can really tell you about Gamma Brewing Company for the moment. Definitely one of the Danish breweries to keep an eye on at the moment. They're doing some very, very nice stuff, and I would highly recommend that you try some of their beers, particularly if you're into the New England hazy IPAs. One thing I do want to see from Gamma Brewing Company at some point though would be another West Coast IPA. I think I had one from them back in the day, but I would like to see some more West Coast IPAs from these guys at some point. So yeah, fingers crossed they can do that. I've had some really nice Imperial Stouts from these guys. I think I've had 2, and I think I had a black IPA from them at one stage as well. But like I said, this brewery is mainly New England hazy orientated, and they do very well within that style category, I hasten to add. But yeah, as I say, that's all I can tell you about Gamma Brewing Company for the moment. If you want to learn more about these guys, you can check out the brewery website. You can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and you can check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn more about all of the different beers that these guys have done. So yeah, let's get on and actually have a taste of this beer itself then. So I'll let you have a little look at the artwork of this before we open it up. As you can see, this just looks like a kind of, it actually looks like a, you know, a kind of impressionist painting of lava or something like that. I don't know if that's in any way a halfway decent representation of what's supposed to be going on in the artwork here, but you always get really interesting things like this on the Gamma Brewing cans. But there you can see at the top of the can, there's Go Off, and on the back here you can see Gamma Brewing Company symbol. So Gamma, of course, is named after the gamma radiation, very high energy waves. Like I said earlier on, this one is an 8% double hazy New England IPA. I did write down the profile of this beer. So this one is hopped with Azacca, Cashmere and Citra. Azacca, as we know, lovely kind of sharp mandarin-y notes. That's an American hop, about 14% alpha acid, roughly 13-14 if I remember rightly. There's Cashmere, which is another American hop. That's a really, really interesting one. It's got some melony notes to it, but also quite a bit of lemon lime. I've had that in quite a few Slovenian beers actually, and it's always been interesting. And then there's Citra in there as well, which we know very well. Again, about 14% alpha acid, mangoes, lots of little fruity complexities, and so yeah, but it's also got a malt base of extra pale oats and rolled oats and also wheat in it, and it uses a WLP London fog yeast, WLP 6066 to give you exactly. But yeah, 440ml can this one. I think, I'm trying to remember, I think I paid about 50 or 55 Swedish kronas for this one. Let's say 55, so that's roughly about £5 sterling, €5.50, about $6 American, maybe $6.50. The American dollar is getting a bit weaker just now. But yeah, 440ml can for an 8% double IPA, especially a Danish one where labour costs and so on are a bit higher. That's not bad at all. So yeah, let's get this guy out then and we'll get on with the tasting. Very curious to see what this beer has in store for us. Nice to have Gamma on the channel once again too. I need to get some more dry and bitter stuff as well, come to think of it. Gamma and dry and bitter have always been doing some really nice stuff. But let's get the beer out and we'll get on with the tasting then. This looks like it's going to be good. See, you can smell it already, but we'll come to the aroma in a little minute. Let me just pour this out. There we are. So yeah, I've still got maybe about a quarter of it left, something like that, but we will put it out in a little bitty, just making sure that this is actually lined up nicely. My OCD kicking in, still getting used to this GoPro, as I've said in various videos before. But yeah, as you can see with this one, it's poured really interestingly. Actually, you can see this one has a little bit more of a kind of bumpy head on it. The head, incidentally, before it fades away, is roughly about 2/3 of a finger. I would describe it as a more kind of creamy coloured head rather than being perfect white. It's a little bit more foamy towards the surface of the liquid, but otherwise it's quite, you know, quite bumpy. But yeah, there's 1 or 2 big bubbles sticking towards the side of the glass, a few little ones just going up towards the bottom of that head there. But I mean, overall, not too much carbonation visible. But the level of haze on this one is pretty impressive actually. This is one of the soupier and gloopier New England IPAs I've seen in recent times actually, and it's definitely one of the paler looking ones as well. So I would say that this beer looks like a kind of apricot juice or a bit of a pineapple juice. I always like comparing the New England IPAs to different fruit juices because that's just what their appearance reminds me of. So yeah, I would definitely go for a sort of apricot or pineapple juice when using this one on the colour scale. Remember, when it comes to the colour of these beers, it's dependent on a couple of things. 1, the type of malts that you use in the first instance. 2, the length of your wort boil. The longer you boil the wort, the more the sugars caramelise, thus you've got a darker beer. But also adjuncts and barrel aging can play a role in some beers, but not in this particular instance. So yeah, this one, I think, you know, when it's got extra pale oats, rolled oats and wheat in it, you've not got something like Maris Otter or Cara Munich or Golden Promise or something, and usually they're the things that will give you a slightly darker colour. This is actually quite a pale, it's not the palest I've come across right enough, but it's actually quite a pale looking New England IPA in my mind, so that's why I say pineapple or sort of apricot juice actually. But yeah, it certainly looks the part. The level of haze in this one though, as I said, is pretty impressive, and that's usually down to the ratio of oat and wheats in the beer. Theoretically speaking, as you go up the alcohol scale in a New England IPA, you've got more oats and wheat in the beer, so it should become a little bit more hazy. The yeast also plays a role though, and it's all to do with the kind of ratios. Some New England IPAs are more barley malt orientated, they tend to be a little bit kind of less hazy if you like, so it just really depends from brewery to brewery. But from memory, this is one of the paler and one of the more hazy New England IPAs that I can remember having from Gamma Brewing Company. But you know, speaking generally, this one in terms of its appearance, as the appearance, it's not overly surprising when you consider what style this beer is. So yeah, looks pretty nice, this one, for an 8% New England double IPA, good level of haze on it. So yeah, let's take a closer look at the aroma then and just see how we get on with this one. I'm very, very curious about this beer. Now that's quite interesting. It's quite a mild aroma actually on this one, and it's got that thing that I've had in a few Gamma beers from what I can remember. It's got a little bit of that sort of farmhousey kind of thing going on too. I have noticed that. I think it's maybe a thing with the WLP yeast, but in fairness, with these London fog yeasts, I've had it in beers before. I think it was Green Gold Brewing from down in the Savinja Valley in Slovenia. Actually, they love, I think they actually grow, it's the Rojnik hop farm down in Slovenia. They grow a lot of cashmere. I wouldn't be surprised if that's where Gamma have sourced their cashmere from, come to think of it. But there's something in the aroma here that's just very, very familiar, and it makes me think about those Green Gold beers that I had that Luca Rojnik from Green Gold Brewing sent me maybe about a year and a bit ago. Actually, really reminds me of that. So the cashmere as a hop, and you know, these London fog yeasts, there's something really interesting goes on there actually, and you can get that in this beer straight away. So this beer, you're going to notice as soon as you take a look at the aroma, it's got a really kind of farmhousey sort of thing about it. There's a little bit of woodiness to it. There's a little bit of like a Jacob's cream cracker sort of thing going on in there as well. I don't know, do you get Ritz crackers in? I think you get Ritz crackers here in Sweden, so I'm guessing that you can get those in Denmark as well. So yeah, it's got a little bit of that kind of butter crackery sort of thing going on with it, a little bit of woodiness and just a little bit of graininess, that little bit of farmhousey sort of thing. You get that straight away with this beer. But in fairness, I've had that out of quite a few Gamma Brewing Company beers in recent times, so I wonder if what they're doing is they've taken one of these you know, these WLP yeasts, and they're sort of making their own kind of culture of it, if that makes sense, because you do notice a kind of similarity with these beers, and I've not noticed it too much with other breweries, come to think of it, that use these beers, other than Green Gold. That's the only other one that really comes to mind. So I'd be curious to know whether Gamma are, you know, slightly, you know, developing their own sort of yeasts and things on the back of the WLP 66 London Fog. But yeah, this beer has that almost slightly farmhousey thing that you can often get in Gamma beers, definitely. So yeah, it's got a little bit of a woody backbone, a little bit crackery, like I said, but otherwise, you know, when you take the aroma in, you do get a nice little bit of wheat out of this one. You get a little bit of that wheaty bitiness at the back of the nose, soft kind of white bready character in there. It's got a little bit of doughiness to it, and yeah, it's got a nice little bit of oatiness, kind of smoothness too. You can feel the oats are sort of thickening up the beer there, and there is also some kind of Werther's Original butter candy notes in there, but those are very, very minimal actually. So yeah, quite an interesting backbone to this one. We've kind of speculated a little bit about that, but the malty yeasty side of things in this beer is actually quite typical compared to the other Gamma beers that I can think of having had before. So yeah, let's focus on the hoppy side of things then. Let's look at that. So yeah, I would say there's a little bit of earthiness to this one. Just a little bit though, but the component of this beer, the main green component, is the big floral aromatic notes in there. It's got a lovely big, I wouldn't quite describe it as spicy, but it's got a nice big sort of, you know, sharp floral aromatic-y sort of thing coming out of the beer. So I really like how that side of things goes together in this beer. It's really big and aromatic in that sense, and I think that builds a good bridge with the sort of wheaty edge that this beer has as well. At the front of the nose, you've got a little bit more of a kind of grassy character to it as well, and I would say that the grassiness has a good little bit of zest, but I remember this being a characteristic of the Cashmere hop. Cashmere always gave you a little bit of a more kind of zesty, grassy kind of quality. So yeah, the green component of this beer is not surprising, big and floral and quite aromatic in a lot of ways. So let's take a little look at the fruity side of things. Yeah, it's actually kind of like a fruit salad in some ways. You've got quite a few things going on in here. First thing that I notice, of course, is you get a mix of that melon from the Cashmere and the mandarins from the Azaka. Those are quite prominent, and it's really interesting how that goes together. So you can smell that slightly more almost oily, melony character, and it's sort of, there must be a little bit of a kind of antagonistic thing going on with the Azaka, because normally Azaka is going to give you a big sharp mandarin and a bit of pineapple, but you can feel the melons almost just making it's almost nullifying a little bit of the kind of sort of sharpness that you would often get from Azaka actually. So the melon from the Cashmere and the sort of tangerine notes, the mandarin notes, sorry, from the Azaka are just kind of mixing together. You can really smell that, and it's quite an unusual aroma in that sense. So you can smell a mix of melon and mandarin going on in this beer. You do get a wee bit of the pineapple, in fairness. There's a good wee bit of lime in there as well. I'm actually getting a good little bit of lime kind of sitting underneath the melon. But the fruity notes in this are actually very interesting. You know, at the very tip of the nose, you do get a wee bit of the bright mandarin. You get a bit of the lime in there as well. But yeah, the way that the mandarin notes and the melon interact in this one is really, really interesting. At the back, you know, a little bit further back, more towards the middle of the nose, you will get some softer tropical fruits out of this one. Definitely the mangoes from the Citra. There's as I say, a wee bit of pineapple in there as well, and a slightly stronger passion fruit. But the fruity side of this beer, overall, I think is quite interesting. And the more that I smell of it, the more I get that big oily mix of melon and mandarin out of the beer. It's a really interesting thing that's going on there, I have to say. So I would say with this beer, it's definitely worth taking a bit of time to ponder over the aroma, because it's quite quirky and unique, but I think it's about time that we try this one now. So yeah, I have to say, very, very curious about this one. So let's go for it then. This one is the Go Off, an 8% New England Hazy double IPA from Gamma Brewing Company, now based in Herlev, out in the kind of northwestern parts of Copenhagen. Let's get stuck into this one. Slange, skål, cheers. Let's go for it. Oh yeah. That's a very, very nice beer once again. You know, I'd felt in recent times some of the Gamma Brewing stuff had it hadn't been, you know, it hadn't been quite as good as it had been when I was reviewing the stuff back in, you know, sort of October and things like that. It was still good beer, but it just wasn't quite at the same kind of heights that it had been. You know, maybe about 6 months before that or something. There was something, I don't know what exactly it was that was going on with it, but the beer that they were producing at that point just wasn't quite on the same level as some of the stuff that we'd had previously from Gamma Brewing. But this one is pretty damn on point actually. So thumbs up to Gamma Brewing for this. This beer, I can see why this one has been really highly rated actually. My first impression of this beer is that it's very, very smooth. It's got a nice thickness to it, and then the fruits are really nice and just almost kind of slick. It's got a good balance between oiliness and just juiciness. So yeah, I certainly like how this beer goes about its business. So thumbs up to Gamma Brewing for this one. And this, as I say, must be one of the last beers that they've brewed at Goerlo's, come to think of it too. So end of an era for them. Does it say on the can whether it's Goerlo's or not? Yeah, no, this is Goerlo's. It says there. So yeah, the next beers will be saying Herlev, I'm sure. But yeah, this is a really nice and just very smooth, slightly oily and slick New England IPA, this one. So gets a thumbs up from me, as I said. Where to start with this beer then? The other thing I'll say about this is that it is a little bit more kind of wheaty and bitey than the Aroma would have you believe. Yeah, you do just get a wee bit of wheat out of this one, but it's got a lovely kind of creaminess to it as well, come to think of it. So we'll come back to that a little bit later on. But yeah, let's try and break down the mouthfeel of this one then. So straight away with this beer, in the middle third of your palate, you can feel that nice, soft, white bready quality. That just blankets the middle of your tongue there. It almost has a little bit of that sort of wet, white bready, doughy kind of thing. That kind of balances out in the beer as well. It's just interesting for me because the beer comes across in some ways as being a little bit almost, it's almost a little bit kind of porridgey in a sense. You get a little bit of that out of this. But yeah, the way this beer does become progressively more oaty the more that you drink of it. So I like that about this one. So yeah, soft white bready character underneath there. You can feel the oats kind of thickening the beer out and just making it a little bit more sort of creamy and things the further you go into the aftertaste too. But yeah, I certainly like how that side of things goes together. And this is one of the things I always find interesting with these Gamma beers. You get this sort of farmhousey, yeasty kind of thing out of them, you know, woodiness and crackeriness and stuff, but you don't get too much of that at all in the actual flavour. This one's actually a very kind of straight shooting and really nicely composed beer. If you go to the front corners of the palate and then move diagonally back, you will get one or two little woody notes in there, and then there is a little bit of the crackery sort of thing. But yeah, just those are just kind of really mild undertones, if you like. But on top of that, a lot of soft kind of white bready note in there, and that works out really well. And then you've got some, you've got a lovely kind of oaty, smooth, creamy sort of thing, just kind of sitting in on top of it too. So I really like how that part of the beer goes together. The malty side of things in the middle third of your palate in this beer, I think, is really, really well executed and quite straight shooting. So maybe this is one of these beers where, you know, the base in this one was like extra pale oats, another type of oats, and then wheat, if I remember rightly. So it's a bit of a straight shooting malt base in this one compared to some of the other ones, and maybe this is another beer that's going to show the age-old phrase, yes, sometimes simplicity is the best recipe. So yeah, but on the back third of your palate then you get a nice sort of wheaty bitiness out of the beer. You can definitely feel a bit of the more wheaty bitey qualities on that back third of the palate. In the middle, in the border region between middle third and back third of your palate, you can feel there's just a little bit of a slightly thicker note in there. There's a good little bit of graininess as well, which I think is quite interesting. And as the beer kind of in the back third of the palate, you can feel the yeasty notes just thickening up the beer a little bit. So at the back third of your palate, you can feel the thickness is like this, and then as you move further forward, it gradually just tails off a little bit. And as you reach the border region, it goes down, and then as you move further and further into the middle third of your palate, you can feel it's quite a dense and slightly thicker layer of, it's a kind of thicker and denser layer of malty notes that you get out of the beer. So I like that about this one. I do like it. But yeah, on the hoppy side of things then, I think we've said all we really need to about the malty and yeasty side of the beer. But yeah, back corners of the palate, you've got a nice little bit of a kind of earthy note there, but as you move further forward from that, it quite quickly becomes nice and big and floral. I do feel that there's a wee bit of a kind of piney resinous note under this one, and I'm trying to think which of the hops that would come from, because, you know, Cashmere I don't remember being overly piney. I remember it being more floral. Could be the Azaka, come to think of it. So yeah, remember, all of these hops, it depends on it depends on when in the boil and stuff that you add them. I don't know if they will have used a bit of Columbus earlier on. When you add the hops earlier on in the wort boil, that's when they're going to give you more bitterness, and you've got that trade-off over the period of the wort boil where bitterness disappears in favour of flavour and aroma. So maybe a little bit of the hop has been added early on just to give you the bitterness, but you do definitely get a little bit of an almost piney resin undertone on the sides of your palate, but you can feel it's quite bright and floral and maybe just a little touch spicy, particularly as you move towards the front kind of corners of your palate. So the green component of this beer is quite interesting as well, but then round the front curve of the tongue, it's distinctly lighter and more grassy, and there's a good little bit of zestiness in there as well. If I remember rightly, that's the Cashmere that's going to give you that zestiness, but although Azaka shouldn't be discounted there as well, because it has that big kind of mandarin-y orange sort of thing too. So yeah, I think both of those two hops are contributing a little bit to the grassy component in this beer. But yeah, the green component in this one, I think, is really coming across very, very nicely. And I think it builds. It comes in and it's got a little bit of zestiness there, it's got a little bit of floral aromaticity, but the whole beer just smoothens out very, very nicely, I would say. So big thumbs up to Gamma Brewing Company for this one. I think this is a solid effort of a New England double IPA. So yeah, pretty impressed with them, I have to say. I really like how this thing goes together. But yeah, let's focus on the fruity side of things then. So as I always say, on that front third of your palate, that's where you get that nice oily bubble where those juicy fruity esters just roll their way out of the beer. On that border region between middle third and front third of your palate, you can feel again a little bit of a slightly thicker, bready, doughy sort of thing. There's a little bit of bread crusty quality there. And the basis of the fruit part of the beer, it's a soft kind of oaty note that you get underneath this one, definitely. So yeah, I do like how this beer's kind of going about its business actually. In the middle of third of your palate, as I say, you can pick up that I think you get more and more oats out of this one as you go further on. So this beer for me really is leaning more towards the oaty end of the New England spectrum the more that we drink of it. But anyway, on the fruity side of things, at the back of that front third of your palate, there is a wee bit of a kind of intense passion fruity note to the beer. But as you move further forward on the palate, you'll start to get, it does become a little bit more sort of mango-like. But then the sort of mandarin-y notes, you can feel the mandarin really coming out of this one. It pushes into the back half of that front third of your tongue. So the Azaka's really coming out in quite a powerful way for me in this beer. But I think the Azaka and the Cashmere together are doing some really interesting things. You can feel the melon and the mandarin really giving this beer a big kind of citrusy pungency on the sort of the front of your palate. On the very front edge of the tongue, you can feel there's quite an intense limey mix of things going on, and that's, I think, giving a little bit of prominence to the grassy component of the beer and giving you the zestiness in there. So yeah, the melon and the mandarins are really matching together in this. There is a wee bit of pineapple kind of sitting on top of that, and that'll come from the Azaka. But yeah, the fruity side of this beer is quite interesting, and this is really a more zesty, it's a more kind of zesty and sort of citrusy leaning New England double IPA compared to others that I've had in recent times, come to think of it. But I like that direction that it takes. So yeah, in the aftertaste, this one really becomes more, you get a good bit of a mandarin-y zest out of it, you get the melons in there, and then you get the lime kind of playing a good role as well. So yeah, this is interesting. I think that kind of summarises the fruity side of this beer quite well, come to think of it. There's quite a few things just going on in this one. This is a beer that's taken a wee bit more time to analyse, I guess, but I think that sums up the flavour of the beer quite nicely, in fact. So let's move on to the mouthfeel to kind of round off the review then. So I would say that overall, this beer's kind of at the top end of mid-bodied, bottom end of full-bodied. I would be more tempted to say bottom end of full-bodied. The carbonation is very smooth. There's a good oiliness to this beer, but at the same time it maintains a kind of degree of thickness. In terms of hoppy bitterness, I think this one's 30 IBUs. I think this is a fairly standard 30 IBUs, maybe 40 at a push. I would say, remember, this is my weakest point when it comes to beer reviewing though, is the IBU count. I always mess that up. But yeah, sort of 30-40 IBU New England double IPA, this one. The beer does kind of soften up a little bit the further you go into it. I think it does get progressively more juicy and kind of creamier the more that you drink of it, and also a little bit slicker. You get more of the oily characters coming out, which promotes the fruitiness in the beer. So yeah, that works for it as well. But like I say, the middle of your palate is very smooth in this one. I think this is a slightly more oaty leaning New England IPA, but it does have a wee bit of wheaty bitiness to it as well. Very smooth in its malt base. The hoppy components, as I say, are quite nice, and it's got a little bit of floral bite to it. And the fruits have a good little bit of a citrusy, zesty sort of thing. I would say that this is more of a citrusy, zesty New England double IPA than a kind of tropical fruity one. So I think that summarises the beer quite nicely in a lot of ways. I think that summarises it fairly concisely at the end there. So yeah, I guess we can leave it at that with this review. It has been a little bit of a longer one, this, but it's just nice to return to Gamma, and I like to kind of reflect on the beers a little bit when I've not had something from the brewery in a while. So I hope that you guys have enjoyed that anyway. But yeah, I'm certainly impressed with this one. I heard good things about this beer, and it certainly didn't disappoint. Let's say that about it. So yeah, we can leave it at that for this review. So this one was the Go Off, a really citrusy and oaty leaning New England double IPA, in my opinion, from Gamma Brewing Company, now based in Herlev in the kind of northwestern part of Copenhagen. One of the Danish breweries that you really need to check out. I've been impressed with them over the last few years, and it seems that they're kind of getting back to their A game, if you like, so long may it continue. But yeah, once again, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comment section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Gamma Brewing Company as well. We will return to them very soon, I'm sure, especially for that Zigzag review, and I'll see what they've got coming out within the next few months. But definitely, Gamma Brewing Company will feature again on the channel, and you'll see more Danish reviews very, very soon. Check out my social media, check out Gamma Brewing Company, check out my other Danish reviews, and I'll see you soon. Slange, skull, cheers, and catch you guys in the next review.